So I'm excited to make hummus for the first time in a few months. I have some garbanzo beans here from the store. These were fairly affordable, like $2 maybe. 90 grams of protein and about 1,800 calories here in this pound. Much higher quality protein than in most other legumes. I have some tahini. This was, I think, from Whole Foods. This is a imported tahini, I want to say from Egypt. I'm actually more excited about this one, but this is already open, so I probably need to go ahead and use this one first. A few herbs from the garden, some lemon basil, oregano, some apple mint, 3 different types of garlic. Then I have some extra virgin olive oil here. Depending on how much hummus this makes, I may end up using a cheaper olive oil. Certainly not something like this. I only use this for cleaning cast iron pans. I wouldn't consume this. But I do have some cheaper olive oils here. This one's not extra virgin. It's a little bit cheaper. This here is a cheaper olive oil. I have a couple of these that are fairly affordable. But this is my nicest tasting olive oil at the moment, and it is a full bottle, so I might separate out some of the garbanzo beans and make a small bowl of hummus with this, and then make a larger bowl with one of the others and see what the taste differences are. I over-soaked my garbanzo beans. I don't call these chickpeas anymore because they're not peas. I'm going to drain these now. So these cooked for about an hour and a half. I accidentally soaked mine too long. I read that 8 to 24 hours is plenty. I let mine go for like 32, so I guess they'll be good and soft. I'm going to drain these, and then I'm going to mash them up with a mason jar at the bottom, because I have a masher thing, but it's really hard to clean. And I find that a jar or flat bottom glass is just as effective as a fancy masher and much easier to clean afterwards. So yeah, I'm going to mash this up, and then we're going to start adding olive oil, and I'll alternate mashing with stirring with a spoon, and then I'll slowly start adding salt. I like to use a pink Himalayan salt. It does not supply iodine, but it tastes good and has lots of minerals. So yeah, I'm going to sprinkle a generous amount of that in there. Hopefully I don't have to add water. I know all the store-bought hummuses have like water usually as the main ingredient. I think that's more for like a whipped texture. I don't really care if my hummus has a whipped texture. I'm okay with it being heavier and less smooth, because I think it's ridiculous to add water to a product, especially when it comes in plastic, and so you're just wasting more plastic for a product that's mostly water or half water. I was horrified the first time I looked at a ingredient label from store-bought hummus and saw that water was the first ingredient. But anyway, I'm gonna get to mashing. So I rinsed these a couple times in cold water after draining off the boiling water. I just like to cool them down. That way I can add raw garlic and it doesn't get cooked. Garlic retains more of its medicinal and infection-fighting properties when it is in its raw state. So I use garlic mainly to boost my immune system and things like that. I also just love the flavor, but if I had added the garlic in here when the garbanzos were still really hot, some of it might have gotten cooked. Some of these little skin things did come off when I was washing with cold water. I don't bother removing these. Nobody's got time for that. I've heard you get smoother hummus if you take all the time to remove these, but that seems like a lot of time. A lot of these did come off, I don't know about a lot, maybe half of these did come off just when I washed them, and that's great. If they come off by themselves when I'm washing and draining the water, cool, but I'm not going to spend time going through and removing them. It's just not really necessary and doesn't change the texture that much in my opinion. You could do this with a blender or a food processor, but I'm kind of lazy and don't like having to wash more things than I have to wash. So I just mash this up with a mason jar here. And then every 30 seconds or so, I'll take a spoon and scrape all this off the jar. And that'll give me a chance to stir this for a second. add some more salt, add some more olive oil, and a few cycles of mashing and stirring, adding olive oil. And this should be nice and smooth. So that's about as mashed up as I need it to be. It'll get a little bit smoother as I start to add tahini and olive oil. The more tahini you add, the less olive oil you need. Tahini is also going to add quite a bit more protein. So if you're doing this more for, trying to get protein, you might want to go heavier on the tahini. Tahini's hard for me to find and kind of expensive, so I've made hummus before just with olive oil. You obviously have to add a lot more olive oil if you're not doing the tahini, but you can also do kind of a balance of the two. Other oils that would be fine: avocado oil, sesame oil, obviously. I do have some sesame oil back here that I think I need to use soon. I want to say it's going to expire. Some really nice toasted sesame oil. Uh-oh, it says best by August of 2020. Well, that's not good. I suppose that means my nice walnut oil is probably also expired, huh? 2021. Maybe I can still use the walnut oil at some point in time. I think avocado or even coconut oil would be fine in here too, but I'm going to use mostly olive oil, I think. But yeah, I'm going to put quite a bit of tahini in here, and I did notice that my tahini looks very runny, so there's probably some stirring that needs to go on, but I'm just going to go for it. I shook it. Quite a bit of tahini in here. So again, this was 1 pound of garbanzo beans. That's probably close to half a cup of tahini there. And then because we used quite a bit of tahini, we can get away with less olive oil. It's probably about a 1/4 cup of olive oil. In terms of the raw garlic, I'm going to add probably 10 good solid cloves. If you had smaller cloves, you might want to add 15 or 20. We're going to be quite generous with the pink Himalayan salt, but I guess that's a personal preference thing. And then the herbs are more just for color, in my opinion, and a little bit of aromatics. That's our lemon basil. We're going to get that into tiny pieces and add it. 1 little sprig of apple mint, again, into tiny pieces. And I guess the more oregano the better, but I only picked, I think, 2 sprigs like this. Don't put the stems in there. Just get the leaves off in tiny pieces. But yeah, we're going to stir this up and then have a look. So I'm very generous with the salt, probably more so than most people. I also think you can't possibly have enough olive oil, so I did add a little bit extra olive oil in there. There's all our chopped raw garlic and our 3 different herbs, and we're just going to stir pretty intensely. You could also put some black pepper or Tabasco in here, but I think with all the raw garlic and the basil we won't need it. Come on, camera, turn off. There's water on my phone screen and now it's not responding. So there's our finished product with 1 pound of garbanzo beans. We got probably 2 meals worth of hummus there. I'd have no problem putting that down in 1 meal, but in terms of digestive health, probably better to break that into 2. So our protein totals, we had 90 grams of protein from the garbanzo beans. We got another 30 grams of protein from our tahini. We used 1/3 of this container. So we're looking at 120 grams of protein. In terms of total calories, Lord knows with all the olive oil I put in there, but the garbanzo beans were about 1,800. We probably added, I don't know, 6 or 8 tablespoons of olive oil. That's another 800 calories or so. And then with our tahini, we added 1/3 of this bottle, so that's another, I guess that's about close to 1,000 calories from the tahini. So all together, said and done, we're looking at, 2,700 calories or so for the whole thing. So not enough to fulfill my day's requirement, even if I ate all of it. But quite a bit of protein. If I eat half of this tonight, that's 60 grams of protein. I'll probably throw this on tortillas or something like that, get a few more grams. You could also have this with like tuna or something. But yeah, that's our finished hummus there with all of our raw garlic and herbs, and it's going to be delicious.